In the heart of a lush green valley lived Percy the pig, a creature with a nose like no other. His snout was a precision instrument, constantly twitching and snuffling for hidden treats. He could detect a buried apple or a fallen ear of corn long before any other animal even caught a scent. But Percy had a secret heart, as cold as his nose was sharp. He believed that every morsel found was his alone. He spent his days hiding carrots in the thickest brambles and hoarding ripe fruit in hollow logs. To Percy, the idea of sharing was a dangerous path to hunger. He watched the world not with wonder, but with a calculated greed that kept him isolated in his own abundance. Every morning, the other animals gathered by the river, a joyful community sharing what they had. Molly the sheep brought sweet clover, Benny the rabbit offered carrots, and Tina the squirrel shared her berries. Percy would lurk in the shadows of the bushes, his eyes narrowed. He waited for a moment of laughter, a second of distraction, and then he would strike. He would snatch their hard-earned food and vanish into the undergrowth. One summer afternoon, Benny discovered a magnificent patch of watermelons. Before the others could celebrate, Percy sprinted ahead. He rolled every heavy melon into a muddy ditch, hiding them under piles of branches. When the others arrived to find an empty field, Percy stood by with a blank face, feigning ignorance. That night, he gorged himself in the dark, laughing at his own cleverness. But his pride met the mud when he slipped on a rind, falling headfirst into the muck. As autumn painted the valley in gold, food became precious. When Molly found a tree heavy with red apples, Percy was there first, driven by a frantic need to possess. He stuffed his sacks until the branches groaned and snapped, locking his haul inside an old, drafty barn. But nature has a way of reclaiming what is wasted. Within days, the sweet scent of apples turned into a sickly, fermented stench that made Percy gag. The fruit had rotted in its confinement. Frustrated and angry, he tossed the spoiled mush aside, yet his heart remained hardened. Even as the wind grew colder and the other animals huddled closer for warmth, Percy stayed behind his locked door, surrounded by the smell of his own failure, refusing to admit he needed anyone. Winter arrived with a brutal, biting wind. The animals pooled their meager supplies, finding warmth in their shared breath. Percy sat alone in his hut, ignoring the desperate knocks at his door. One night, a tiny mouse named Millie appeared on his porch, shivering violently in the blizzard. "Please," she squeaked, "just a crumb." Percy peeked through a crack in the wood. Though his shelves held a few potatoes, he lied through his teeth. "I have nothing," he grumbled, watching her trudge back into the white void. But karma arrived on the wings of the gale. A massive branch crashed through his roof with a deafening crack. The storm roared inside, scattering his remaining food into the freezing dark. By dawn, Percy was left with nothing but a broken home and a hollow stomach, his treasures buried under feet of snow. Exhausted and trembling, Percy stumbled through the drifts toward the distant glow of Molly's barn. He stood at the threshold, the golden light spilling out onto his snow-covered hide. He expected anger. He expected to be turned away. Instead, silence fell over the group. Molly looked at the broken pig and simply gestured to a spot by the fire. Benny, without a word of reproach, slid a bowl of steaming soup toward him. The warmth hit Percy's face, and for the first time, he felt the true weight of his actions. He wept. He wept for the mouse in the storm, for the stolen melons, and for the lonely life he had built. The next morning, he dug through the snow to find his last hidden sack of potatoes. He carried it to the barn and placed it on the communal table. Looking into their eyes, he spoke clearly, "I'm sorry." As they cooked together, the meal felt more satisfying than any secret feast he had ever enjoyed. Spring thawed the valley, bringing new life to the soil. Percy worked harder than anyone, his nose now seeking out spots for gardens rather than hiding places. When he found a hidden field of winter turnips, he didn't reach for a sack. He ran back to the village, shouting for everyone to come and share the bounty. At the final spring feast, Oscar the Owl raised a wing for silence. The animals cheered for Percy. The pig, who who had finally understood the greatest truth of the valley. He realized that while food might fill a stomach for a day, the act of sharing builds a life that is truly worth living. Under the warm sun, Percy smiled, finally full in a way he had never been before.